Now, if you're designing any saltwater tank, if you cannot easily fit a drum into the top of the tank for filling up, or the sump, you'll find that the tank is a complete pain in the neck. So you need to make sure that there's plenty of room here to put a drum, or you have a big pain in the ass. Not in a good way. Due to very high stock in this tank, and therefore high nitrite, I've done an 80 litre water change on this tank alone. Now, one thing I hate is filter socks. I call them filter sucks because they're so hard to clean. So they work very well, but they're a pain in the neck. So for me, a filter sock goes in the bin because they're too hard. I just put some filter wool down, or preferably polyfilter. When it's dirty, I throw it in the bin with the filter socks, put some new one in, works beautiful, and it's very easy. Not waste your life cleaning stupid socks. So now I'm going to change some water on the barramundi and use my gravel cleaner to stir up the bottom, and hoping that the gravel cleaner will suck a bit of the crap out of the gravel. So the water in this bucket should get nice and dirty, because it's always better to pull the crap out of the bottom than just take the clean water out of the top. And then I'm going to put back fresh water and some salt water. So I'm going to put a bit more salt in with these fish, because that'll help their condition until they get yum yum eaten. It's good to stir up the bottom every time to get all the crap out of the bottom. Puts a lot more value into the water change, because you don't want to just take the good water off the top. So I just increased the amount of salt by adding a bit of salt water into these guys. They did freak out a little bit, and that might be because they've got a little few sores and stuff on them, and the salt would definitely help to heal that, but it might be a minor bit of discomfort, even though it's very good for them. They're settling down nicely now, but a bit of salt really helps barramundi. Anytime you're playing around with fish tanks, it's really important you check all the power points are plugged back in and back on. It is the easiest thing ever to walk away and forget to plug something back in or turn something back on, and that can be at the detriment of the fish. Now, to do the water change in these tanks, I've turned off this pump, and when you turn off the pump, it's also good to turn off the chiller. The chiller is aligned with the pump, and you don't really want the chiller on with no water going through it. The pump is in there, blows the water up through the chiller, the UV, and into here. It's all this lovely dirty water coming out of the tank. I'm just ruffling this gravel up, helping to stop the gravel from going anoxic, digging the gravel cleaner in and pulling all the crappy water out. You don't want to just come with a hose and take the good water out of the top, otherwise the water in your bucket will be crystal clear like the tank. You want to pull out all the dirty crap water, and the way you're going to pull that out is by cleaning the gravel like this. Very good. So you want to throw that out. You don't want to throw that out. Now, when I poured the water in this tank for the water change, I didn't understand why all the fish went to the middle of the tank, freaked out and started trying to swim down. And I just figured out why that's the case. Because when I poured in the water, the gravel must have got washed away from the middle. And because the gravel got washed away from the middle, the fish must have thought that they could swim down because of the glass. So if I just move this all over so there's no hole in the middle from the water change, then I'm guessing they'll stop that behaviour. Because it's like they all got in the middle and started trying to swim down and splashing all the water out of the tank. So as long as there's no hole in the centre where there's just glass, making them think they could go down. Now that I've covered the bottom, I'm assuming that behaviour will stop and they'll stop splashing water all over the place. Genius. Okay, so this service I've given that filter a good clean. Next service I'll give that filter a good clean, and then the service after that I'll give this service a good clean. Now there's no point cleaning every filter every time, it just doesn't need it, because most of the function of these filters is biological. It is important to replace the mechanical when you see it's dirty, but the biological doesn't need to be done all the time. So you do need to just gauge by looking at the media and seeing how dirty it is. The media must be cleaning water from the tank, not water from the tap. And if you just do one system at a time, then you should have it under control. So if those filters got a good clean a couple of times a year, I would expect that that would be pretty normal. And every season it's good to clean this air grate in the chiller. And then we do want to set this skimmer a bit better. So if we turn this to close it, the bubbles should come up. If we turn this to open it, the bubbles should go down. And the key is to turn it a tiny bit, wait a bit. See how it's starting to come up now? And then wait a while, then come back. And as long as the bubbles are in this neck and the white bubbles staying in and the yellow bubbles coming out, then I'm happy. But if I can get nice clean white bubbles here, I'm happy. Just by turning that up or down. Now safety, Sam. It's really important that all electrical items are secured so they can't fall in the fish tank. So we've double cable tied this air pump here, and that's going to do two good things. One, it's going to make sure it can't fall in the fish tank, and second is it's going to make sure it's not touching anything so it doesn't vibrate too much, because these things get super noisy if they can vibrate on something, and I'm not talking about a good vibrator. Now another fun tip for the day is that the higher the surface area to ratio volume for your volume, the more stock you can have in a tank. So if you have a tank that's low and wide, you can have a lot more stock and a much bigger bio load than something that's high and potentially thin. So all these commercial tanks are really better if they're not too high and they're nice and wide. You don't want them so wide that you can't reach things, or it becomes a pain in your wherever you stick things. So if you had that super high tank, you would have a lower dissolved oxygen level, therefore a lower redox potential, therefore a lower biological capacity, so you cannot have as many fish. If you have a lower water level, a higher surface area to volume ratio, you can actually have more fish or more stock because your capacity will be higher, because your redox potential, which is how fast the bacteria can break down the waste, will be better. Now I've never heard of this brand of pump, SDC, and I don't really know why it's flashing. So if you know SDC pumps or why they flash, put a little note on the bottom of this video. Otherwise I'll just ask Callum. He knows everything. Just missed the stacks on lobster fight. As soon as I get my camera ready, they stop biting, but these guys are having a good old brawl. Thought that'd make a good video, but obviously as soon as I get my video out, they stop brawling. Bloody lobsters. Lobsters. Now you really need to have the skimmer in a fixed water level, because if the water level of this sump raises, the skimmer will skim more. If the water level of the sump goes down, the skimmer will skim less, meaning you've got to adjust it all the time. So a fixed water level is the go, and in a perfect world you can even put a top-up system on it, so it automatically keeps the sump level correct. That way your skimmer's always working. So the last thing you do with every single job is check the power points. Want to check on, On, not on, on. So you want to make sure everything's plugged in and make sure everything's on before you go. Very, very important. Hey Buster.